It is
Recording in
March
progress.
the 8th. It is at 7 o'clock, and I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order, and I'll take a quick roll call. Amy.
Here.
Peter.
Here.
Paula.
Here.
Rick.
Here.
Mike Fiore.
Here.
Bill Rotundi.
Here.
Aaron.
Here.
Here.
Kevin.
Here.
Zach.
Here.
And Bonnie.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much. So, the item we have on the Charter Commission, and Laura wanted to come and give a presentation regarding their recommendations, their process, and go forward. So, Laura, you can take it away at this point if you're ready.
Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it. I'm just looking down the participant list. I don't see that the Charter Commission has formed yet, so I am going to move forward with this will be a presentation from members of the Charter Commission, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon or this evening. We know it's a busy season for you. We appreciate you providing us the opportunity to provide you folks with a quick update. I won't take up too much of your time, but just wanted to give you an update and kind of go over the changes, especially the changes to the budget process, which hopefully will generate some questions that we'd be happy to answer for you. So, just as background, as part of our information gathering, the Charter Commission met with several members of the Finance Committee back in November of 2019, which seems like a really long time ago, in order to determine what they felt was and was not working with respect to Finance Committee and town government in general. Some of the things that the members there had pointed out at the time were they felt that the elected officials should be the ones that are setting and communicating the priorities of the town, and that should happen prior to the budget season. We should have more longer-term planning that we tend to operate on a reactionary basis, and it makes it harder to find a way to move forward without proper planning. Members said they would also benefit from getting information earlier in order to give them time to digest and develop pertinent questions. They felt they would also benefit from having more time in general to discuss the budget overall. If you don't mind, at this point, I'd like to just provide a quick general overview of some of the major changes that the Charter Commission has recommended, and then I'm going to focus specifically on the updated budget process and the timeline.
Yeah, Laura, that'd be perfect. So if you could give some high-level summary, and then we can take questions at the end from the finance.
Sure.
Thank you.
Perfect. So the Charter Commission unanimously recommended a change in the form of government from town meeting to town council. Voters would elect a 7 at-large town council to serve staggered 3-year terms, and they would act as the legislative branch of the government. We recommend the retention of a strong town manager who's appointed by the town council to run the day-to-day operations of the town. And this change would consolidate the current executive branch power of the select board and the town manager into the town manager's position. And these changes result in the elimination of the town moderator. The current Finance Committee would be replaced with a standing subcommittee of town council, which may include members of the public. Our recommendation provides the framework to create a Department of Public Works where town departments, water, sewer, highway, etc. could be consolidated. Under this, the town council would assume the policy and rate setting authority of the Board of Public Works, and while the responsibility of the day-to-day operations of the DPW would lie with a director that would be appointed by the town manager. That particular change eliminates the need for a separately elected water and sewer commission. Our recommendation lays out a budget process that starts earlier, and it emphasizes clear communication and collaboration across town government, including town manager, town council, and the school committee. It also establishes procedures for new direct participation by citizens in town government. And it also provides for smooth transition from the current form of government to the new one, with the formation of a transition committee, which will provide guidance and direction during the transition to the new government format and ensure that government continues to operate effectively. The new charter calls for 2 members of the Finance Committee to sit on that transition committee. And if you don't mind, if you could allow Sandy to share her screen, she is going to walk you through some of the specific updates to the budget process. And then Chairman Evans had already provided us with one question, which I'm happy to answer when we come back. And then we'll open it up to questions from the Finance Committee.
Can everybody see the chart that I have on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to go through the budget process timeline. We just spent a lot of time talking about how to use a lot of your kind of recommendations to see if we could streamline the process, make it a little bit better. So a couple of things to note here that we changed. First is that it starts a lot earlier in terms of the first, your budget requests are supposed to be submitted by December 31st. There's then a requirement of a joint meeting between the town council, school committee, and town manager. I know that joint meeting has been happening the last couple of years. I think the commission felt that it was important to put that in as a requirement and to leave that tradition to have that to kick off the budget process. The next step is similar to what we have in our charter now, where there's a preliminary proposed budget and then a final proposed budget. Those are about the same time frame, but there's a lot more detail on that, and I'll go over that in just a second. There's also still a public hearing, like there is now, prior to the finalizing of the budget, and then the adoption is a little different. Right now it's happening at Springtown meeting, and it'll be happening it's at least by the deadline is 15 days prior to the start of the fiscal year. The 2 parts that I starred there, the preliminary and the final proposed budget, again, we put a lot more detail in those sections than what in the current charter. In the preliminary budget right now, the current charter simply is just a revenue and expenditures for the current fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year. And the final budget shows the actual expenditures for the previous 2 years, the appropriated transferred amount for the current fiscal year, the department request, and the town manager's recommendation. So that's the current charter, what's in there for requirements now. We included all of that plus in both the proposed and the preliminary and the final. They have to provide a complete fiscal plan of all town funds and activities, including short and long-term goals and methods to measure outcomes and performance related to those goals. And additionally, the new charter requires the town manager to provide both the preliminary and final budget message, which must explain the budget and link programs to goals and community priorities and include long-term policy setting. So we heard about that, the long-term planning and long-term the policy setting. When the members of FinCom came to our meeting, so we tried to include all those pieces in the new charter. So those were all again much more laid out and described more fully.
Okay. Before we open it up to questions, Chairman Evans had asked us to specifically discuss any cost or saving estimates from our recommendations. And ideally, a charter commission should not be thinking in terms of what things will cost and save. But since we all live in this town and we know its current financial situation, admittedly, that's easier said than done. But in the end, our job was to recommend changes or improvements to processes that aren't working and those that may have previously led to bad financial decisions. So the Charter Commission did not require anything that would add to our costs, and we are hopeful that some efficiencies could be gained by our recommendations. And I will now open it up if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, so Laura, just a couple of questions for me.
Sure.
So what we're saying, I know there was a lot of recommendations on personnel, and I know it was kind of pushed off. I know there was discussion on HR, things like that. But from the cost benefit perspective, there is no cost benefit analysis that you have looked at for some of your recommendations?
There is not specifically because nothing in the charter. So within our report, we made comments with regards to things that we heard during our information gathering. Things like HR, things like IT. But those are things we don't necessarily have the ability to require within the charter. We would expect the town manager to run his or her town and form that organization as they see fit. In terms of there are no required adds to staff under our charter recommendation. So, for example, we have, in terms of the DPW, we've created a framework. We can't require a framework within the charter. Can't require a DPW within the charter. We can set up the framework to have that established. That is not an overnight process. That is going to take probably a couple of years. That would be headed by a DPW director, but that's not necessarily a new add to staff. That could be created by one of the department heads that currently exist, and that would be at the discretion of the town manager.
Okay, so it sounds like we're really talking about more efficiencies.
Exactly.
And one of the things, I know you had referenced some bad budget decisions in the past, and maybe I misunderstood that comment.
Not bad budget decisions. We're talking more about decisions that may have been made at town meeting that were not in the best fiscal interest of the town. For example,
So
not necessarily nothing that FinCom specifically had ever decided.
Okay.
Or, things that were voted on at town meeting that may have not made the most fiscal sense for the town.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
And then just, if everything moves forward, can you guys give a general timeline on how this would work? Obviously, it goes to a vote, but trying to figure out, we're in the middle of the budget process, we're looking at 7 additional people, how that would work and kind of that timeline.
Nope, that's an important one. Thank you. So the election would happen on April 10th. If the charter recommendations pass, it does not affect the budget that you currently have in process. Town meeting would still proceed on May 8th, I believe. I forget the date. Town meeting still proceeds. Town meeting still votes on the budget on which you are currently working on. The select board would call for a special town election to take place at some point at their discretion before the end of June of this year. And once that election takes place and the town councilors are sworn in, July 1st are essentially a town council form of government, and that's when the transition starts. So in terms of the budget process, changes would not take place until the end of this year, going into next year.
Okay, and so then that transition team becomes very important, trying to, I won't call it hold hands, but I'm going to say hold hands of the potential 7 new members of the town council, I guess. Okay.
Yes,
pretty much
exactly.
understand the budget at that point.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and we felt it was important that, people that are currently working, so there are members of the Charter Commission that will be on that council, the moderator will be on that council, 2 members of FinCom will be on that committee, and off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember who else.
No worries, you don't have to, that's fine. And that...
Scrolling quickly.
That's not and that transition team will be selected how? Is that based on...
It's defined within the charter.
It is, okay, and I missed that. All right. And so I'm just curious, so I know in the reference of your materials, it referenced surveys, and that is part of the fact finding. And I was just curious, how many surveys got mailed, and then how many were returned for input into your processing, if you will?
So we didn't actually mail the survey. It was an online survey, although paper surveys were made available at Town Hall. And is Jamie here? Does anybody remember how many surveys back, I want to say it was in the neighborhood of 200 to 250 maybe.
We
overall.
also made them available at the Council on Aging as well.
Oh, right, yep. Yep, and Kevin actually presented at the Council on Aging.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And really, my last question, it still surprises me where I have people coming to me and saying they really haven't heard much on the Charter Commission. So I was wondering, how was that outreach to the town? So...
We are using every method that is presently available to us. So up until now, so we've got frequently asked questions on our website. We have taped a informational video on Norton Media. We've also taped our frequently asked questions on Norton Media for those people who may not have access to a computer. We use the Sun Chronicle. One of the important things to note is this week, actually tomorrow, as part of our process, the state requires that the Charter Commission's final report and the charter be mailed to all households with at least one registered voter in the town of Norton, and those are going to be mailed tomorrow. So I expect probably starting as early as next week, we are going to be seeing quite a bit of interest and questions. So we are presently on social media. We are releasing frequently asked questions on a kind of every few days basis. We will also be hosting 2 informational sessions. The first one will be on April 28th, which is a Sunday, at 4 p.m. And then the second one will be on April 6th at 7 p.m. And I guess if you have people who are looking for additional information, if you don't mind, if you could please just forward them to our webpage on the town website. And they can feel free to email us specifically at charter@nortonmaus.com, or they could reach out to any of the individual members of the Charter Commission if they're more comfortable with that.
Perfect, thank you.
Oops, sorry, Sandy?
Sorry.
I want to add to that, we did have already the 2 public hearings. We did one in person, we did one virtual, and we have posted a lot of things on Norton Alerts. So we've utilized the Norton Alert system for anybody who signed up for that to send out alerts about our public hearings, our survey. So we've gone beyond just social media to really try to access, as Laura said, every avenue possible.
Nice.
You were actually on AM radio this past weekend.
There's still such...
That's right, WARA.
I think we had about 8 people listening.
And also, I have a radio show on there every Thursday that I discuss all things that go on in Norton and in the meetings, and mention some of you guys on the radio.
Thanks, Peter. Does anyone else on the Finance Committee have questions for Laura or anyone on her committee?
Laura, I have a question. Hi. Could you give a little bit more detailed information about the public participation in the budget process? So it says in your timeline that there would be a public hearing after a final submission, a budget proposal, final submission of the budget proposal is out. Would there be any public participation prior to that in the budget process?
Well, not specifically, but just like all of other open meetings, they're all open to the public. One of the other interesting things with regards to public participation and kind of an increase in communication, one of the new areas that we've added to the charter is a public hearing called by the town council specifically to hear feedback from the public on policy matters that they would like to see addressed in the next fiscal year. So there obviously don't necessarily have to be budget or fiscal measures mentioned there, but we would be looking for input there. Like I said, meetings are open to the public. Any members are welcome to attend, and provided the chair allows comment on an agenda item, they could certainly weigh in.
Very much.
Chairman? Go ahead, was that Michael? Or was-
Yeah.
Mike?
The largest portion of the budget is the schools. And what's the relationship as far as presenting the budget, who gets final approval? And right now there's an arrangement with a lot of fixed expenses. I mean, basically, who makes the decisions when it comes to dividing up the resources between the school and the town?
So the budget with respect to, I think it's important to point out that the autonomy that's granted to the school committee to provide their own budget, that's granted by the state. The charter has absolutely no control over that. And so their budget process, other than the changes to the timing and some of the processes, would tend to work the same. It should be done on a collaborative basis. It should be done earlier so that the town manager, the school committee, and the town council are all on the same page, and we would expect them to work collaboratively to determine what the final budget looks like.
So there really isn't much of a change then when it comes to how they present the budget. And would it still be like one line item as it's presented in the town meeting? Well, I guess the town council, there wouldn't be any, they would have the information at their disposal. Okay, never mind. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the Finance Committee members?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Zach.
Good evening, Laura. Thanks you guys first for the tremendous hard work you put into this. I know you guys, I try to watch a lot of your meetings, but they go on for hours and hours and hours and hours.
All right.
But what do you say, talking to some friends here that live in town, what do you say to those that say that, having lived here myself for a couple decades now, that there has been, and you outlined it in your report here, that there's been a distrust of government. So, a lot of, I'm trying to plate this not to offend anybody here. Okay. So over the years, there's been a distrust of, let's say the select board, the various town managers over the last couple of decades. So you're proposing under this charter to say, okay, we're going to give you select people a new title as counselors. We're going to give our town manager, whoever that may be, twice, 3 times the power he has today. And remove all the guardrails of, this finance committee, the town meeting, and so on and so forth. Why would you give the keys to your house to somebody you don't trust? Why would you give access to your checking account to somebody you don't trust? Because I would think, even as outlined as your own report, the vast majority of townspeople don't trust their local officials.
That's a great question. Thank you. If I could just clarify one thing. So the select board currently is the executive branch with the town manager. Under our proposed recommendation, the executive branch lies solely within the town manager, and the town council becomes the legislative branch. The town council are elected by all of the voters in the town. They are accountable to the town. The town council is specifically responsible for finding and hiring the town manager. So once the town council is elected, come July 1st, their very first order of business is to do a town manager search. We would expect and hope that is that decision is made and that decision goes well, and it is in the best interest of the town. The town manager is accountable to the town council. And if there are issues, we would hope that it would be a more collaborative working environment where there is more communication and transparency and planning going forward. So, and if there's not, then the town councilors that made bad decisions, they're accountable to the voters and they can be voted out and replaced.
Okay, touching up on that, we currently have an election coming up, as you know, April 10th.
Yes.
And on that election, you have 2 planning board seats that are nobody's running for, they're going to be empty.
Yes.
You have 2 school committee seats that are unopposed, and you have the current situation with the Water Sewer Commission that everybody knows that nobody wants to be there either. What is the mechanism? I mean, basically, there's little interest in people running, for office. So what is the mechanism when you have 7 seats and you have 4 people and that they go unfilled?
Yeah. So, it is unfortunate. I think, I should also point out that we only have 2 select board seats up for grabs right now. We do have 3 people. We do have a contested race there. So I am hopeful personally that going forward that the change in the form of government kind of reinvigorates the population. People start to build a trust. They get more information. There's more transparency. They get more communications. We would hope that that would invigorate and eliminate a lot of the voter apathy. We would also hope that the town manager going forward would work on outreach and trying to engage the public, engage young people specifically, but get people interested in town government and getting involved and being a part of the planning and moving this town forward.
Can I add to that as well?
Sure. Well, you didn't.
Yeah, I think.
Just one thing, Cindy. But is there a mechanism within the charter if the seat goes unfilled? What happens?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I thought. Go ahead, Sandy. Go ahead. I misunderstood the question.
I'll let you answer that first. Go ahead.
Yes. So, okay. So I have to think about this. If there is a seat, if there is a town council seat that is vacant, if it is within or longer than 6 months of the next upcoming election, the town council can replace that. It's basically an appointment by any registered voter. In terms of seats that are available on multiple member bodies, for example, planning board, the town manager has then the appointing authority, and with the collaboration of the seat on which the committee has the vacancy, they would work together. The committee can put forth a recommendation for who they would like to see. The town manager does not necessarily have to accept it, but it comes up to a vote, and the vote is by the town council and the board. No, town council or the town manager. The town manager and the board, which has the vacancy, would vote on the replacement seat. Did I get that right, Sandy? Thank you.
Rick, hold on, I think Sandy had a question first, and then we'll go to Rick.
Yeah, I was just going to add to a couple of things Laura said. Zach, you had talked about the town manager being having a lot more power. I think we did definitely put a strong town manager in the charter, but we currently have a strong town manager in our current charter. So in terms of the power structure there, the board of selectmen is no longer part of the executive branch, but the town manager's responsibilities shifted in some ways, but really I wouldn't say the power, I forget what you said 4 times, more.
We're not turning the keys over.
Exactly, yeah. So I think there's definitely still the checks and balances in a new charter. And I think, one of the biggest things we kept hearing was accountability, right? That with a town meeting, whoever shows up, it's just random who shows up, who's interested, and whatever decision they make, you're just kind of stuck with it. I mean, there's obviously some mechanisms for changing some things, but we've been left with a lot of decisions that haven't been ever changed. And there's no repercussions afterwards. There's no way you can say, well, the people that showed up to that town meeting, I can't unelect them, right? They're going to come to the next town meeting. So I think, again, the idea of the town council is that you have people accountable to you that you can unelect should you feel that they're not voting in the best interest of the town.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Any member could answer this question, but just with the town council, it seems with the new charter, the positions are all at-large positions. Was there any consideration, usually with a council form of government, there's ward or precinct members, and then maybe, in our case, it would be 5 precinct councilors, and then maybe 2 at large. That way, I think that would give a little bit of a focus or a ownership, and each precinct would have more of a direct representation. Because right now, I mean, by theory, you could have 7 people on the same street being on the town council.
So that particular question is the one we're getting probably the most often. It was the subject that we talked about more than any other by multiples. I think we deliberated on that particular issue for at least 5 hours over 3 meetings. And then we went back at the end before we voted on the final charter to make sure we were still happy with our decision. The 2 primary reasons for that decision were we wanted to ensure that all councilors are accountable to all townspeople, and we wanted to maximize the pool of candidates who are willing to serve. So the case for precincts is typically focused on representation, but we are a very small town. Any particular issue is going to affect everybody in almost some way. Councilors should not be beholden to any one precinct, any one neighborhood, project, group. They should be answerable to everybody. We want them making decisions on a holistic basis that are for the good of the town, not just the precincts in which they reside. So electing councilors maximizes the quality of candidates and the choices available to voters. A good candidate should not be able to, should not only be able to run when they want to run, but they also should be able to get elected regardless of where they live. And a bad councilor shouldn't be able to hold on to their seat just because, in our particular case, 80% of the voters don't have a say in whether that councilor stays or goes. We felt that precinct seats could lead further voter apathy when, again, we're trying to reinvigorate and engage the population. And the best way to do that and maintain the engagement is to make sure that everybody gets to vote for all councilors, and anybody who wants to run can run in any election. In regards to representation, again, we felt that ultimately people will have a tendency to seek out the person that they know or feel comfortable approaching, and it may not necessarily be the councilor who lives in their precinct. And through the new charter, we just felt that at-large provided the broadest choice for deciding who best represents.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Zach, can I just add?
Absolutely. That's what you're here for.
So I think what you're talking about was some of the mistrust, especially the people that have been in town longer, saying that they've mistrust public officials, town managers, whatnot. I think some of that is, in my opinion, caused by the town meeting. For instance, I think people see these good ideas that people are bringing to town meeting, whether it be FinCom's recommendations, the town manager, through the course of action, the selectmen bring some of these things to the town meeting, and then to find out that through lack of participation, not enough people showing up, special interest groups coming in and shooting these ideas down, to find out weeks or 2 later that, these ideas went by the wayside, and it becomes this mistrust of, well, why wasn't the town doing what was best for Norton? Well, we were trying, but due to lack of participation, due to lack of, the amount of voters showing up, we had this kind of politics on demand where people were showing up and shooting these ideas down. And, through the grapevine of this, people have become, well, we're not doing what's right for Norton. Well, we were, but through the process, this is what happened.
Yeah, in my opinion, I also think a big chunk of it is to do with money, not the politics of it. There's never enough money to go around, and everybody's, thinks that people are filling their pockets and all kinds of crazy things you see on social media.
And I understand that aspect. Of course, money's always the number one issue. If we had unlimited money, we could do unlimited things. I get that.
If we had unlimited money, there wouldn't be a charter commission. Everybody would be, fat, dumb, and happy.
But I still think some of the issue. We don't have to go back into some of the town meetings over the last couple of years and watch some of the ideas get shot down through town meeting vote, whether it be for a special interest neighborhood and whatnot. That would have greatly benefited 20,000 people in this town. And I get it. There was 100 people that showed up and voted no for it. Well, what are we looking at? Are we looking at 100 people that the best interest? Or are we looking at what's best for 20,000 people? That's not to do with money. That's just, I agree. Again, decisions being made for politics on demand, 100 or 120 people showing up, 80 of those are from neighborhoods that are being told by one person, hey, don't vote for this, it's going to affect that neighborhood. And I get it, I understand it. But that's the problem with town meeting, and this is some of the issues that we heard through, listen, what is best for 20,000 people? What's best for 13,000, registered voters in town? This system, in our belief, after we've dissected it in hours and hours of meetings, for transparency and whatnot, is that the people still have that ability to vote in a council that they believe is going to be working for the best interest of the town, that are going to be able to dissect issues as they come up, that we're not going to be waiting for 2 meetings, a year to make these decisions. Let's be honest, this is a fast-paced world. Technology is outpacing us, every day. So having to meet once in May and once in October and make decisions for town that are going to affect us for 5, 10, 15 years is a totally inadequate system. This is a group that's going to be able to meet weekly and have decisions as they come up. When projects come up, when decisions need to be made, they're going to be there to make them. And this is why we believe that this is going to be for transparency-wise and accountability and what the town needs to follow through on certain projects.
So, giving you guys the opportunity to sell this, what would you say to the one that says, in Massachusetts, over 250 communities today have a town meeting form of government, over 250. I stopped counting at 250.
That's fine.
Town meeting, the most direct form of government. Whether you like it or not, you get the fringe people that show up, you get the crazies, but it is the most direct form of government. So, tell us why we should give that up.
Yeah, Laura, let me add to that as well, is just for that same vein. I know there's been a couple that have changed formats, a couple of towns that have changed formats. What were the lessons learned or the efficiencies that have been seen in those towns?
Sure. All right, so let me start with Zach. So while it is true that in New England, town meeting it was the original form of government, it is still being widely used. In the United States, town meeting form of government makes up less than 5% of local government. So,
correct. It's highly New England. It's highly New England.
Very New England. And if it was working, Zach, we would not be here. We would not have voted to elect a charter commission on a 4-to-1 margin. There would be no reason for us to be here. If everything was working great, then we would have. There are towns in which town meeting form of government works. I've seen a couple of them.
Mansfield, Foxborough.
I would argue with you on Mansfield.
They've had tremendous growth. Both those communities have tremendous growth and a tremendous tax base.
I would argue that their willingness to spend money is working more to their benefit than town meeting is specifically. Westwood, for example, town meeting works great. Norwood is a representative town meeting. North Attleboro had representative town meeting, and they are both looking at moving away from that. It's, again, rife with issues from special interests. They have issues with people filling seats, no contested seats, special interest groups getting those seats, and again, you still have the accountability and the inefficiency and the inability to react to opportunities and issues in a timely manner. So if town meeting were working, I wouldn't be here.
And if I could just jump in, I think part of the reason that so many towns still are operating under town meeting is because it is a massive amount of work and an enormous undertaking to move away from it. And that work has now been done.
Yeah, it is a 3-year all-in process.
Just the signature collection alone is a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
I understand that 100%. That's why I thanked them starting out with, but it should be debated. It should be respectfully debated. It's a big change for our community, and I hope that, I see some mudslinging going on social media, but I hope we could have, just a respectable dialogue amongst it between now and Election Day. And I
think it's crucial. We talk about communication. We can't let social media take over the communication platform or spread there. I think it's good to have these kind of meetings where the people involved can level set expectations, answer questions that people have, so everyone can be informed when they go out and make their vote heard. So I think that's really key to get these. So I was just curious too, going back, from a couple of towns that did change the platform to this type of government, what's the lessons learned, efficiencies, how did it work? Are any of them dying to go back?
So we did, we tried to, well, we looked at the timeline that North Attleboro used. North Attleboro is still just a year out from their decision. And we tried to, I don't want to say distance isn't the right word. We tried to make sure that we were not influenced by what North Attleboro did, because it was for different reasons, and every town is unique. Every town has a different reason for doing what they do. We did meet with the town manager in Bridgewater, Mr. Dutton, and they have now switched from town meeting form of government. I think it was 10, it might be going on 11 years ago now. From what was told by the town manager, I actually know people who live in the town of Bridgewater. We understand it's working much more efficiently. I don't think we have ever seen a town that has gone from a town council form of government back to one of the town meeting forms. Sandy, do you recall any? I don't think it happens. Yeah.
The question is, just reading it, can you just give a high level, so if something's declared emergency spending, I noticed that there was a comment in the charter about emergency spending where that'll be voted on during the town. Could you describe that a little bit? Is that similar to the Finance Committee reserve? And to Kevin's point, if something crops up real time, how do you address that? When I'm talking just from the funding side.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I am going to jump to that particular section. Okay. All right, so in the event that there is a request for an appropriation for a sum of money, whether it's a supplement to the budget or for an item, actually you were asking specifically about emergency, but that's within here too. The town council can't act on it until it is given notice and there's been a public hearing on it. To address a public emergency that affects life, health, property, public welfare, town council can make emergency appropriations. They will be accompanied by a separate vote, and it declares the nature of the emergency and otherwise would have been taken with a public hearing inconsistent with public applicable law. But for the fact that it is an emergency appropriation and that public hearing is waived.
Okay, so again, that would be the council's sole discretion to vet and make the appropriation.
It would be coming more than likely from the town manager, with the work of the town council voting on it, yes.
Okay. Does anyone else on the finance committee have any other questions at this time? Rick?
Just finally, again, thanks for doing all this work. But getting back to how does, there is a mechanism, right, for the resident to, there'll be a public hearing, there could be a recourse for a petition. Are those all in play?
Yes, so if you want to have, if you have a minute, I'm happy to walk you through what some of the participation measures that we have are that are available. So right now, with open the meeting, the proposed charter recommends that time be allotted in every single meeting for the public to speak on matters that are not on the agenda, meaning anything they want to talk about, would like to see addressed. As I mentioned before, there would also be an annual public hearing for members of the public to come forward and bring up measures that they would like to see, policy measures that they would like to see addressed in the next year. So matters that are not on a particular agenda, the public may also speak, provided that they have the approval of the town council. Within the recommendations, there's also a new measure for citizen or free petition. Voters can petition either the town council or the school committee to hold a public hearing for the purposes of seeking the passage of a particular measure or a policy. There is also an initiative petition where voters can petition the town council to specifically request the passage of a particular measure. And that requires the town council's response, and if they don't respond, the town council may not conduct any further business until that's been addressed. Town council has the option to reject the measure, or it could reject the measure, accept the measure, or accept a measure in lieu of the one that was proposed. If the town council rejects it, the petitioner could actually force it to a vote at a special election by the filing of a supplementary petition. There is also a referendum option available where if a voter is unhappy with part or all of a measure that has been approved by town council, they can call for the reversal of that with a petition. And again, the town council has the option to reverse it, make changes to it, or put it up to a vote at a special election at their discretion. And as always, the recall of elected officials still remains as it does right now in our current charter.
Okay, and just one last question.
Sure. No, that's why we're here. This is good.
Right.
We were talking about outreach and getting in front.
Yeah.
This is all good. Thank you.
So, does the town council, will they have mechanisms where there'll be 2/3 majority vote, or it would just be a simple majority vote?
Most of the measures, if I remember correctly, only does require a simple majority. There is one that I can think of, and that is in the event that they want to remove the town manager, I believe it has to be 5 of the 7 in order to accomplish that. So it's a majority to appoint them, and it is a supermajority in order to remove them.
But if it's, just say for transferring a significant amount of the budget to one department to the other, it wouldn't require a 2/3 majority
No.
during a fiscal year?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions at this point from the finance committee?
Yeah, I just got one or two.
Go ahead, Zach.
So even on borrowing, Laura, if they're borrowing money, it doesn't require 2/3 if the town is borrowing money? I mean, currently at town meeting, you do 2/3 if you're borrowing money. So
Yep.
it doesn't require 2/3 of the council to borrow money for the town?
Not that I am aware of. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
And secondly, while you think on that,
Yeah.
You're not allowed to bring up an issue the night that it's on the agenda. Explain that rationale to us and how somebody's heard on an issue that they don't know is coming up.
Okay, so agendas are posted in advance. The reasoning behind the not necessarily allowing public comment on things that are posted on the agenda, we would hope that the town council would be reasonable, but it is the feeling that, similar to what you folks do here, what we would do in our meetings, that the town council would exhaust all deliberation and discussion and questioning prior to the point where it opens up to the public. They may choose to close the meeting prior to that point and continue that conversation into a next meeting in the following week. Again, this is a little bit different than town meeting in that there is no specific deadline. Things can be taken up as needed. They can take as long as they absolutely need to deliberate and make sure that they are having thoughtful, measured conversations and making the best decision. If, for example, the town councilors had not finished their own deliberation, they may choose to hold off and just ask members of the public to attend the following meeting. They could ask them to submit their questions in writing for discussion and response in a later meeting as well. We would hope, that just like things happen now, if somebody asks to speak on a particular item, that the council would let them be heard.
Yeah, and to clarify that too, that special part in the beginning of the meeting is an extra piece we added, right? It doesn't exist right now. It's a part that's just an open forum for anyone to speak, and gives them an opportunity to speak. Now I just think about in terms of school committee right now and how heated every discussion is. And so if they had something on their agenda about school reopening and they just opened it up to, and no time limit, no ending, just public forum to speak on that agenda item, I think, at some point there may be a time when they want to cut it off. And I think the same thing could happen with the town council with, they can allow people to speak, but at some point they might want to, I think Lauren had said to us, our town council had said to us that, people, they might want to talk and have that conversation first among the board members or the council members prior to hearing from the public. And so they wouldn't want to necessarily hear at the beginning of the meeting about something they're going to discuss later in the meeting. So again, that extra piece is something that doesn't exist now. And that's why it just gives them one little part that they can sort of cut off the discussion if it's going too long. If it's going into something that they're going to discuss later, they might ask people to hold off until that topic comes up on the agenda. So there's a lot of chances for people to still speak. They just have to at that point get the town council permission, similar to how now you have to get the chair of the Board of Selectmen's or Select Board's opinion or permission to speak and to ask any questions during the meeting.
But for an example, Sandy, what if, the National Grid wanted to put a telephone pole out in front of Sandy's house? And how would Sandy know about that prior to them putting it on the agenda? She wouldn't. So she would have no time legally to speak, is what I'm trying to get at. You wouldn't know about it until it's on the agenda.
So what I guess I'm saying, Zach, is the same. That part is the same thing as now, right? That if you see something on the agenda that's affecting you, that you want to speak at a select board meeting, you have to get their permission. Now we just kind of take for granted that they typically always say yes, that's fine, because
Nobody shows up.
Well, they're elected, right? That ultimately they would hopefully they want to let us give us a chance to speak. That part of it really doesn't change. The part that people are focusing on where it says that it can't be on the agenda, that's the extra additional piece where it's just sort of a free-for-all at the beginning of the meeting where people can speak on whatever concerns and issues they have. And then again, I would imagine if there's something that comes up on the agenda, I might want to wait to hear from that person until I'm discussing that, right? If I'm leading a meeting and we're talking about that telephone pole, I don't necessarily want to hear from it an hour before we're going to discuss it as a board. So it's just not during that first part, but that doesn't mean it can't happen later.
Okay. Again, anyone else on the finance committee with any questions? Okay, hearing none. Laura, thank you so much for you and your commission. We appreciate you coming in front of us, explaining and answering our questions and the work you've done to present this to the townspeople.
Thank you very much. We really do appreciate your time, and we thank you for all the really good questions. This was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you as well. Good night.
All right, Mike, one of the things, if you could kind of, I know we're kind of in the middle, and I know we've heard most of the departments, their budget presentations at this point, but if you could give us a little bit of an overview. I know we have the schools coming forward. I know we have Southeast Regional, Bristol County are coming forward, and then we have all the articles to go through. So could you kind of give us just a summation of where we are and then what we're going to be handling in the next few weeks? We'll start looking at the recommendations moving forward and start voting on some of these budgets.
So, if you could, invite the selectmen to your meeting probably next week, and also a week after that when Southeastern and the VOTEC are presenting, so they don't have to present twice. And also coordinate with the planning director on any planning articles, so we can coordinate joint meetings on those, so they don't have to present twice.
Yep.
I'll have to review presenting budgets to the selectmen and finance committee. Now I've got to go through and figure out who we presented to you and who we haven't, and get back to you on that.
Okay. And what I'd like to do is when we start going into the articles themselves, not the budget, but I'd like to know if we could be probably the last group to review those. So if we have to leverage how, say, the planning board or things like that, I think the joint meetings will help, but how the planning board and that voted on certain articles, just so we can have that input from for our conversation.
So do you want to wait for the presentations, or is it okay to have a presentation to you, but you don't vote until you know what the planning board?
I think we can do that, but we wouldn't bring it to a vote. I just don't want to get bogged up if we can avoid that.
Okay.
All right. And then I know the school committee, I think their meeting is on the 15th. They're going to present the budget to you on the 12th, so we could listen to that. But at that point, when do you think you'll have your final recommendations on the budget ready for us?
Probably the following Monday.
So that would be... So that the 22nd? Okay. So then we could start reviewing those. And then we have to get through the budgets and the articles by the May 8th is there. So it's roughly, let's just say it's the end of April.
Well, for the annual, anything with your recommendations has to be posted 7 days before town meeting, and for the special, 15 days before town meeting.
Okay. So we're saying we have all of our work done by April 19th. I know it's not the exact date, but that's a conservative target. That works. Okay. Then we can lay those out. All right. And Mike, at this point, is there any concerns that we should have that we've encountered? I know we've been meeting weekly, so it's probably unlikely, but any concerns that have come up? One, as far as the budget oversight, overview, funding, fees, revenue, is that still pretty much on target?
Yeah, it's going to be tight, obviously, as it always is, and we may be putting some things off until the fall to balance the budget again. But we'll see when we go through all the budgets and cut what we can.
Okay. Does anyone on the finance committee at this point have any questions for Mike about, one, what we've heard so far, two, concerns on the budget that we've heard so far, or any questions on next steps as far as the budgets?
Question.
Go ahead, Amy.
Do we know if the state is expected to have budget numbers out like relatively on time for this year, or is it going to be another scenario where we're kind of operating using last year's numbers and hoping for the best?
I don't think it'll be as bad as last year. And I think what they're hoping is that the stimulus bill gets passed quickly and they know what's in it for the state. It was interesting to hear that the lottery numbers are way up this year.
Well, with it having been like 800 million and 900 million for like weeks and weeks in a row, they got more of my money in January than they usually do.
That money is supposed to go directly back to the cities and towns, so.
Well, you're welcome.
Hopefully this year they'll do that. I just had some updates too, if I could share them.
Sure, absolutely.
So at the last meeting, someone raised a good question, and so I contacted the insurance company. The question was, why did the school board insurance double? And so I called the insurance company, and they said that it was a clerical error on their part. That if you at the highlighted items here, so in the FY21 budget appropriated, it was $38,757 for public official liability and $12,360 for school board insurance liability. And then if you look at the previous year, the expenditure for school board was $9,030, and for the public official liability was $35,609. So the expenditures in FY21, $24,221 for school board liability insurance and $20,000 for public official. They put the amounts on the bills wrong, and so I've adjusted that on the department request to the right. You'll see I've lowered the school board insurance down to $14,000 and put the public official liability $40,000. That's the way it could have been.
And Mike, while you're pulling that up, James has been going back and forth in the chat. I don't know if everyone saw that, but he was referencing about the majority for capital item, the vote for capital items requiring a 2/3 vote, and it appears that would be the same for a town council vote as well, but he's going to research that and let us know probably next week. James, thank you. Mike, sorry.
Mike, you're muted.
Okay. I was saying, by the way, Sandy will get a notice in the mail certified before they put that telephone pole in front of her house, too. I think it was your committee that asked for a breakdown of the health insurance. So the treasurer's office prepared this. So you can see the PPO plan, there's 17 people on it and how it's broken out. The managed blue for seniors, there's 66, and you can see how it's broken out. And the managed blue LIS, there's 3. MedX, 284, and how that's broken out. And then we have our Blue Cross Blue Shield benchmark plan, and how that one is also broken out. And on the health insurance, I don't know if I mentioned it to your committee before, but we just found out that we're going to have a insurance holiday for the month of May. So employees won't have to pay for a month's insurance, and the town won't have to pay. So that'll save us about $700,000.
Right. Hey, Mike, and I apologize, it wasn't at this meeting, but do we pay 100% for the retired individuals?
No, it's the same 75-25.
Okay.
And if they're on a PPO, it's 70-30.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
I think that was Zach.
Mike, they don't go on, so when somebody gets a job here, they're on a town health plan till they're dead?
In Massachusetts, after 10 years, you're vested for health insurance. So when you retire, you stay on the town's health insurance plan.
They're not eligible for Medicaid, Medicare?
Yeah, they have to at 65. They do have to go on Medicare. I'm sorry.
But Mike, they could get another job too, and we're still paying for that, correct? Until 65?
If they retire, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So the MedX is like, you get Medicare, but you also have to get a supplemental plan, and that's what that is.
Okay.
So as people retire, continue to live longer, how is this not going to bankrupt the town? Spending $12 million a year on health insurance. I mean, it's just not a sustainable model.
No, we don't spend 12 million. When you're talking about the 12 million, you're also including the what we pay to Bristol County Retirement.
Okay.
So our health insurance last year was $7,703,000.
And how did
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
All right, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, thank you. So, Mike, let me just clarify here. This just covers the window in between retirement and age 65 Medicare, right?
No. So if you retire before you're 65, you would stay on the town's health plan.
To death?
So if you look at the benchmark, you'll see there's 28 retired school employees and 43 retired town employees that are still on that benchmark plan. But once you turn 65, you have to go on Medicare. So when you go on Medicare, you need a supplemental, which is the MedX.
And we covered that, so we covered supplemental?
The supplemental is the same. They pay 25%, and the town pays 75%.
And Mike, that MedX rate is usually a lot lower, right? Because Medicare would be the primary coverage?
Correct, yep. So Medicare is the primary coverage. You know, we don't pay that. That's paid by the federal government. And this is just a supplemental.
And how significant a sum in the grand scheme of things are those supplemental payments when compared to our overall healthcare costs?
I'll find that out for you. It's
I don't need an exact number, but I'm just kind of
it's a lot less.
Right. So just generally speaking, we're covering people's health care from the time they retire until the time they hit age 65 and are eligible for Medicare.
Right.
If they live till they're 80 or 90 or 100, does not affect us beyond picking up a little extra on the supplemental.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you.
And that comes into play. Most employees have to work, if they want to get 80% retirement, they got to work until 65. But police and fire can retire. The guys that have been around longer can retire at 55, and the younger guys can change to 57.
Right. No, as long as we can continue expanding our life expectancies, I'm counting on that. So, okay.
And that's when we talk about OPEB. That's what OPEB is. It's to cover the retiree health insurance.
Right. Okay. And Zach, did you have all your questions answered? I think
Yeah,
you had-
Mike, so you're basically spending, $3.25 million into the pension, right, rough and dirty?
Correct.
Is that 100% of the town, or is there deductions from the employees on that?
That's what the town pays, and like the employees, like myself, I pay 11% of my salary into the retirement.
On top of the $3.2 million?
Yes, yep,
And that does not include the teachers, correct?
no.
What happens in that regards,
That's state run, that's all state run.
Okay, and that's in the school budget?
I think it's paid by the state. I'll check with the school department. I don't think the school department pays anything on that. And as far as the other school employees that aren't teachers, that would be part of this Bristol County.
And how is the 75-25% determined? Is that the town determines that? Is it different negotiations between unions? How did we come up with the number 75-25?
That was negotiated. It was, I believe, 80-20 before, and then it was reduced to 75-25.
Across the board, all unions?
Yes.
And Mike, in that same vein, wasn't there an account created for co-pay reimbursements? Is that still in the budget?
It is. Last year it was 23,000.
So not much. And how long does that have to stay in the budget? Is that forever?
That's as long as, the union agreement is. We have a public employee committee, and that's part of the agreement.
All right, because I thought there was something.
It's definitely a savings, to pay someone to get off the health insurance, $2,000 a year or whatever it is, versus 19,000.
Okay. And roughly how many people are not on our plan in the town for town employees or schools?
I don't know that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one more thing on this insurance.
Yep.
So, is there an incentive program not to be on the insurance, Mike?
Yes, that's what Steve was just talking about. So if someone, when we signed the last agreement with the Public Employee Committee, anyone that had been on insurance for the previous 24 months and decided to get off, if they were on the family plan, they get a payment of like $2,500 a year to get off the insurance.
Okay, so wouldn't it be, to the town's benefit to increase that and say, hey, I'll give you $100 a week bonus or $5,000 a year to get off a family plan? Still much cheaper than keeping them on.
Stop doing that negotiations for the unions.
Well, I'm doing it for the town. Put it this way. I mean, in my own business, I have 150, and you know how many people, and I've made deals with all of them, and I have 3 people left on the insurance, 3 out of 150. I give them $5,000 a year to go on their spouses. So, and that saves the business a ton of money, and it also helps them out because it covers the difference between what they're paying on their spouse's insurance. So I'm just trying to think out of the box here.
Yep. Good thought.
Anyone else on the finance committee with questions on this schedule for Mike or medical coverages, payments, etc.? All right, Mike.
This one, I just wanted to show you the benefit of switching over to the new streetlights. So if you look in FY20, we spent $87,000 just on the streetlights in town. And so far this year, we've only spent $15,601. So definitely a savings for us.
Okay.
This is great, Mike.
We like that.
Yeah, it was like $200,000 to install the streetlights, right? Somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yeah, we received 2 grants approximately about 39,000 each, to help defray that cost, so. And we did, receive approval last week as a green community. I don't know if I told you that, so.
Oh, that's awesome.
So now we should be able to get more grants to do, energy improvements.
Sounds great.
And we're also working, the schools in the town received a grant from the state. The state is doing a cybersecurity training program for the town. And so they'll actually, I think the state has a list of all the emails of employees, and after the training, they're actually going to send out some emails to employees and make sure that they learn from the program. So that'll be a good program. And also the planning department just received a $30,000 grant to hire a consultant to work on their downtown initiative to improve things for businesses downtown.
Hey, Mike, just going back on the cybersecurity training, does that mean that members of the FinCom will be getting some kind of notification as well because we have email addresses?
Yeah, I'll check on that. I don't know if the FinCom was on that list or not.
Okay, so I don't think anyone else wants to see Steve Evans soliciting additional.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Is that what you have for tonight, Mike?
That's it, yep.
So, the only thing we have left, and I'm going to ask, I know I sent this afternoon, later in the afternoon, does everyone on the Finance Committee think we had enough time, or do we need additional time to review the 4 sets of minutes that I sent in an email? Can we vote on those this meeting, or should we wait till the next meeting so we can review them? I will take silence as meeting enough time.
Mr. Chairman?
Eric?
Mr. Chair? I, for one, have not yet reviewed them. I saw the email come in, but I have not had time to look.
Two.
Late afternoon.
All right, so good, so fair enough. So I think with that, even with one of us that didn't read it, I think we will make those part of next week's agenda to make sure we go through those minutes. Pat's done a good job taking those minutes. We'll probably have one additional set. She's been pretty good getting those to us, so we will vote on those next week. All right. So I think as of now, we don't really have anything else to discuss unless there's any questions from the Finance Committee at this point.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, Rick?
Just a follow-up from last week. I asked, I'm just curious about legal services, if we could break down that line item and where's that spent?
I almost have that done, Rick, and I'll have that at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Mike, with that same vein, I think next week when we start the meeting, I think we'll go through some of the requests that are still outstanding, so we could get an update or a status on those. And we'll send you the listing as of today, so you'll know what we're looking at for next week.
All right, great.
Yep.
All right,
Chairman?
Thanks.
Aaron?
Mr. Chairman, and Mike, thanks. Yeah, still the, I guess next week, Mike, on that list will be the overall assessment of where we ended up with SEMREC in terms of all the money that got moved between budgets and communications.
I missed that. I have that right now, if you don't mind. I can share that. I forgot to.
Chairman, I suppose.
I must have skipped.
I have no problem. I think if you have it available.
I must have skipped over that. I'm sorry. Professional services and additional equipment that you see, those stayed with the 155 budget, and everything else is gone.
Aaron, does that answer your original question? I'm not sure it does.
Well, maybe with a follow-up. So, Mike, the professional services and additional equipment were part of the communications.
Right, mainly because Charlene was also serving as the communications director, Charlene Fisk, who is the IT. And so now those have come over and they're in the IT budget.
So this $205,000 expended in 2020 for professional services and additional equipment is money that used to be part of our emergency response budget.
Correct.
That
It was part
is
of
now
the,
not part of our SEMRAC budget, but we are paying. So we can basically deduct 205,000 when looking at the old budget versus SEMRAC.
right.
It's actually the old budget versus SEMRAC plus 205,000.
But when I gave you that presentation previously, I didn't include the expenses. I just showed you what we saved
Right,
just on the salary side.
right. But you had told us previously that some of this obligation had been moved to another department. I think actually maybe it came up when we were looking at the 510 budget.
Right.
And we said, well, what's this big increase here? And then it was explained, oh, that used to be part of communications, but since SEMRAC was established,
Right.
now it's moved over here.
Right. So those two items in yellow used to be in the communications budget, and they're now in the 155.
Okay, so then taking this into account, what are we actually saving with SEMRAC?
What I showed you the last meeting, it was $399,000.
So are we saving that amount, or are we saving that less the 205 we see here?
No, because the expenses, if you took all these expenses, we had them anyways, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just showing you what we saved. We don't have more expenses because we went to SEMRAC. We have less in the salaries because we went to SEMRAC. So we saved almost the 430,000 or 423,000 that SEMRAC said we're going to save. And so this is the expense side. These two items are in this budget, but I didn't figure them into the calculation. So SEMRAC, I didn't say, well, SEMRAC said we're going to save $423,000. Now, we saved $399,000 just in the salaries portion of it. These expenses we had anyways. And so you could say some of the savings here would be the RMS software licensing, that $32,000 that we don't have anymore. That came out. Seminars and conferences, training, all that was, we had that before in the previous budget. We don't have it anymore.
So, Aaron, is your question?
If I'm the only one here who's lost, I'll seek further clarification another time.
Well, so if I was saying that you're saving X on expense side, I could see you saying, well, then you got to add this in because we still have it. But I didn't even talk about what we're saving on the expense side. I just talked about what we're saving on salaries. Our expenses haven't gone up. They're the same or lower. We just moved them to a different location.
Okay. So when we originally said we're saving $400,000 on SEMRAC as compared to the old budget, we had already accounted for moving this, and that $400,000 savings is true and genuine and a big win for us?
Yes.
Great.
And Aaron, if one person is not satisfied and get their answers, I guarantee somebody else is sitting on the sideline with the same thoughts. So thank you for pushing that.
Well, I know that, Steve. I've been that person often. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Zach?
on the savings stuff, Mike, can we just get a simple spreadsheet and say, okay, versus last year, we're saving, $400,000 with SEMRAC, $50,000 with lights, $700,000 during the insurance holiday, You know, all these initiatives, so we know, okay, we should have $1 million, $2 million, whatever it may be, more than we did last year, based on these savings. You know, just a very basic one-pager.
Sure.
And I don't know what else is out there that was changed from last year to this year. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the Finance Committee? Okay, hearing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any conversation, discussion, or otherwise? Hearing none, I'll call to the vote. Amy? Amy?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute.
Peter?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Michael Fiore?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
And I am yes. Thank you guys very much tonight. We will have another meeting on Monday.
Have a good night, everyone.